discussing the Young Men of Color Academy, and no action was taken. Looks like we have several speakers tonight. Looks like at the moment we have 12 speakers that have signed up to present in front of the board, and we will have 2 executive sessions at the end of our agenda tonight. Moving on to our next item, would like to take a moment to have our moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to move on to our next agenda item, which is a Pledge of Allegiance. Tom Hudson, is Tom Hudson in here? Tom, if you would stand up, could you lead us in the pledge? Tom Hudson, for those of you who don't know, will be leaving us shortly from our district, but he's also a veteran, and I want to give him the opportunity to be able to lead us in the pledge this morning, or this afternoon.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Member Duncan to read our vision statement.
Well, our vision is for all Jefferson County Public School students to graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, responsible citizens of our diverse, shared world.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. I'd like to turn things over now to Terry Robinson for our recognitions and resolutions. Ms. Robinson.
Dr. Polio, Board Chair Chris Brady, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. This evening, we have the honor of bestowing recognition upon the Phoenix School of Discovery students who have exemplified and demonstrated excellence in leadership, service, and achievement as a National Lead to Feed Student Leadership Program Challenge winner. As a national winner, the Phoenix School of Discovery was awarded $10,000 in technology grants and $20,000 for its chosen charity, Kentucky Refugee Ministries. The school's student team members, Ashley Ezel, Kaya Ezel, Andrea Culver, and Tiffany Alvey, Team Rise Refugees in a Safe Environment, created a Bridge Building Day event to promote cultural awareness and break down walls between cultures. More than 500 students formed teams and helped more than a dozen charities in the community while learning about and valuing each other. Lead to Feed is the nation's leading and fastest growing program that encourages and empowers students in developing leadership, literacy, and teamwork skills by completing service learning projects addressing needs in their community. Board Member Dr. Kolb and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Katie Zeitz, please come forward and extend congratulations to these outstanding students. Joining in the recognition is their teacher, Ivan Jessup, and Principal Ken Moeller. Please come forward. I would also like to ask the parents to please stand and be recognized. Parents, still please stand and be recognized. Parents. Dr. Polio and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Before we move on, I do want to take a moment and recognize one other person, as I did a little earlier this evening. I'd like to take another moment to recognize Tom Hudson. The Jefferson County Board of Education would like to take this moment to recognize Mr. Hudson for his service to the Jefferson County Public School District. Thanks to Mr. Hudson's leadership and vision, the Talent Development Academies will soon take flight. These academies are a model for deeper learning and student engagement. They will also provide our students with the necessary skills to compete and succeed in the workforce of the future. On behalf of the board, this administration, and the students of JCPS, we'd like to say thank you to Mr. Tom Hudson for your service and commitment to our public schools and public education. Mr. Hudson, if you would, have a plaque for you to present to you. Okay, so as is our custom, we would like to take a moment and congratulate our students and anyone else that would here like to take the chance to be able to go home for the evening. So we'll take about a minute or so for that to happen, and then that might free up some seats for those of you who might be in the back if you want to move forward. So we'll take a 1 minute recess.
Congratulations.
There are a few seats up front if you wish to come up and sit down. All right. So I would like to take a moment here to, we need to take a vote to receive the recognition. Is there a motion? Motion made by Member Porter. Is there a second? Second made by Vice Chair Wilner. All those in favor? The vote is unanimous and it passes. Just a note about our about Dr. Hargan. She is unable to attend this evening's meeting. Since we have an empty seat up here, we'd ask Dr. Polio if he would come up and join us, kind of get used to the chair, I suppose. So just want to let you know, if you were wondering where Dr. Hargan is, she's attending a conference and she is unable to meet with us today or be here tonight. But she did phone in via conference call to our work session earlier this evening, because that is a very important item for us, for this board to consider. Okay, so I'd like to move on to our next item, which is approval of the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion on this item before we move on? Member Geese?
So I'd like to move that we hear from our public speakers after our superintendent's report.
All right, so you'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So when would you want that to come?
After our superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. I didn't hear that. All right. Is there a second on that motion? Made by Member Horn. All those in favor? Motion carries. And I'm going to, even though that was an amendment, I'm going to go ahead and count that as a regular motion as well. That's been our custom as of late, so that's not anything new. All right. The next item is to approve the minutes of our previous meeting. Is there a motion to approve our minutes? Motion made by Member Kolb, second made by Member Duncan. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Our next item now is the superintendent's report. As I said, Dr. Hargans is unavailable. However, we do have a video that will highlight our 2016-17 school year in review. So at this time, I'll turn it over for that to go.
The start of a new school year is always something special. Joyful teachers, anxious students, new shoes, hair bows, the sounds of a school bus, sharpened pencils, and brand new crayons and notebooks. It seems on that first day of school, anything is possible, and it is. Our homework this year as a district was to make our strategic plan, Vision 2020, come alive in classrooms across JCPS. More than 160 JCPS employees attended our Collective Voices sessions. And when you see these stickers in classrooms or schools across the district, you know that someone has witnessed Vision 2020 in action. And it was my goal to actively engage, hosting expanded cabinet and listen and learn sessions at our schools. And I went on area visits with each assistant superintendent. We even hosted a visit from the U.S. Secretary of Education. And what did I see at every school? Signs that our strategic plan is taking root.
We focus on the acronym LIFT, which stands for Learn, Invest, Friend, and Teach.
Even our Superintendent's Advisory Council worked on passion projects to engage our community in meaningful ways.
In JCPS Innovation and Play Day,
from Permission to Play Day to project-based learning opportunities, it was rewarding to see the strategic plan jump off the page and take life in our classrooms. This school year, we have a lot to celebrate as we move this district further toward meeting the goals set out in Vision 2020.
In academics, we focused on the Cradle to Career Pipeline, a collaborative community commitment.
Being a part of this program has offered me so many opportunities.
And we've made advancements along every step of the journey by partnering with the city and the business community. JCPS topped the 80% graduation rate for the first time in the district's history. In our K-Prep results, student achievement was up across the board. We had more proficient and distinguished students than ever before, and we had fewer students drop out. We had 26 schools honored as distinguished schools, and many of our schools were some of the top scorers in the state. In the past 5 years, we've doubled college and career readiness. U.S. News & World Report also named 6 JCPS schools as best public high schools in Kentucky, and Schaffner was named a Blue Ribbon School. The Bellarmine Literacy Project is helping us meet our 3rd grade reading pledge. We expanded the program this year, serving more students at even more schools.
Big J, look at you go, girl. High five. All right.
And for the first time, JCPS topped the state average in kindergarten readiness, thanks to our early childhood intervention efforts and our summer kindergarten camps. Plus, we have 2 exciting opportunities on our horizon. First is the district's Deeper Learning Symposium to showcase the instructional expertise of JCPS teachers and national peers. And we'll soon be launching our Talent Development Academies, which will help prepare our students for jobs of the future.
We're at the Iroquois Amphitheater. This actually made us a better person in general because it helped us, finish a project and showed our hard work ethic.
On a larger scale, JCPS has been actively engaged in helping transform the state accountability system. And when our students have needed it, we've provided additional supports through ECE or trauma-informed care. We also now have 23 schools participating in our Compassionate Schools project, where students learn to help focus and regulate behavior. We revised our Student Behavior Supports and Intervention Handbook to clearly outline the expectations for students, teachers, and administrators. We conducted Infinite Campus data entry training for administrators and continued our work to implement restorative practices and positive behavior intervention systems with fidelity. Finally, we revamped our principals meetings to make the content more relevant and engaging for our school-based administrators. 8 JCPS schools received diagnostic reviews this year, and all 8 principals were determined to have capacity to lead the turnaround efforts at their schools. And this comes just shortly after KDE determined our district had the capacity to turn around its priority schools. And a special congratulations to Valley High School, the 3rd JCPS school to exit priority status, following in the footsteps of Wagner and Fern Creek. The district hosted its first ever Priority Teacher Institute, utilizing the expertise of local master teachers and principals. And NISL training, a nationally research-based leadership opportunity, continued for school principals. Diversity, Equity, and Poverty presented an updated equity scorecard and helped facilitate a joint board meeting between the Louisville Urban League, JCPS, and 55,000 Degrees. DEP worked to increase minority participation in AP and gifted and talented programs. DEP also held community meetings to get input for a proposed JCPS Males of Color Academy. It launched a speaker series featuring national and local experts to help engage the community and families. This school year also saw DEP host its Equity Institute and expand professional development trainings for cultural competency and increased enrollment in the Renaissance and coding programs. DEP also actively engaged our parents through the 15th District PTA, and our Clothing Assistance Program helped provide clothing and uniforms for our most vulnerable students. All of these accomplishments helped earn Dr. John Marshall the honor of being named a leader to learn from by Education Week.
We can have students from all different walks come together and talk about books and talk about things that you might not have time to talk about in class.
Our data division engaged with families by sending letters to 88,000 families regarding their students' attendance, behavior, and academic performance. Data turned into action with the creation of a new data dashboard to monitor behavior and attendance across the district. Plus, the division worked cross-departmentally to engage families who had not engaged in school choice before by targeting zip codes with the enrollment bus and digital marketing. And this year during enrollment, the online predictability tool gave JCPS families information about their likelihood of cluster school placement.
Welcome to Norton Commons Elementary School.
In operations, we celebrated the opening of the new Norton Commons Elementary School, the district's first new school since 2008. Operations implemented $60 million in district-wide improvement projects and opened the new 313 helpline to help streamline communication with the district and be more responsive to stakeholders seeking information. The divisions also worked collaboratively to reduce bus routes by 73% and provide bonuses and escrow options to bus drivers in order to increase retention and reduce absenteeism. In Finance HR, this year we unveiled a new budgeting process that is more cohesive and collaborative. The restructure of HR is complete, and a new application system has been rolled out across the district. We've reinstituted the screening process to help add qualified administrators to the leadership pipeline and streamline the process for employee discipline. This year saw a legislative session packed with several bills with significant impact on JCPS. During the session, we were able to strengthen relationships with legislators and host numerous school visits. Through information, advocacy, and legislative relationships, the district was able to successfully engage stakeholders and provide accurate impact information about a bill that would have effectively dismantled the district's student assignment plan. We were able to work with legislators to try to impact charter schools legislation to protect the interest of students and taxpayers. And in communications, the division launched a new employee intranet, a new app to improve internal communications, and a new Fast 5 to provide important information to employees in a quick and easy to understand manner.
Today is Mayor's Giveaway Day.
As you can see in the classroom or through civic engagement opportunities like Mayor's Give-A-Day, We Day, and Lead to Feed, Vision 2020 is alive in JCPS, and our students are at the center of it all, right where they should be. To all of our students, teachers, administrators, and staff who have planned, persevered, believed, dreamed, beat the odds, broken barriers, and helped others, thank you. You made history this school year. We are JCPS.
All right. Want to extend some thanks to Dr. Harkins for putting that together, as well as our communication team for that excellent presentation. So thank you. At this time, due to our amended agenda, we will be moving our public speakers up to this point of our evening. So let me read our instructions for our public speakers. In accordance with Board Policy 01.421, the Board expects that persons who have signed up to address the Board will limit their remarks to the subject that they listed at the time they signed up, that their presentation will not include any defamatory or abusive remarks about that subject, and that they will present their remarks in a manner that is consistent with the orderly conduct by the Board of its business. Informational handouts may be given to the Board Secretary for distribution in accordance with the policy. This is our Board Secretary, Angie Gilpin. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once. At that point, you'll have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, a bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. The superintendent will look into the speaker's issues and, if necessary, represent the board and follow up in any follow-up or recommended action to the board. Also, in accordance with Board Policy 01.421, the board reserves the right to limit, extend, or terminate any speaker's presentation if the speaker's remarks are not consistent with the requirements of the board policy. If the speaker makes an allegation complaint against an individual staff member, I will say, excuse me, but board policy requires that no person may initiate charges or complaints against an individual district employee at a public board meeting. The superintendent will have staff that follow up with that person after the meeting. If the speaker makes an allegation or complaint concerning an identified student other than his or her child, again, I will give a statement that's similar to what I just said. If the speaker presents defamatory or abusive remarks, I will again probably end your presentation. Same thing, if the speaker refuses to leave the podium or is otherwise disorderly, we will deal with that. So just wanted to put that out there. So we are, I don't want to go into details, but we will just want to be very clear on what we expect from our public speakers. We, as I said before, we have 12 folks that are signed up to speak. The first person to sign up to speak is Pedro Bryant regarding young males of color. So if you can come up, Mr. Bryant. Next will be Rowan Claypool. That will be next on deck to talk about Teach Kentucky. Mr. Bryant.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Pedro Bryant, and I am President and CEO of Metro Bank here in Louisville. Ms. Duncan, a short while ago, you read the mission statement. 5 years ago, Diane Porter asked me if I would consider being a volunteer in the school system, and I said yes. About a month later, I told my wife I wanted to quit. For 5 years, I've been volunteering at Maupin Elementary School. Maupin has some wonderful and talented kids. Males of color, the challenges that our community faces, particularly with young black males, is very alarming. What I've seen with the kids that I mentor at Maupin Elementary, it's deep and it's personal. Last year, my second group of kids finished 5th grade, and I asked them to make a list of their closest friends. Having been with them for 3 years, I was stunned when my name was one on all 3 of their list. What I've found is consistency and commitment is what young people look for. My guess is that each one of you sitting in front of me, if your kids could choose who their parents would be, and I asked my staff this earlier today, would they choose you? Our kids face many challenges. Young black males are dying at an alarming rate. They've seen violence and things many of you could never imagine. When you read the mission statement, I asked myself, do the children believe that? And do you really believe it? Because your actions will tell them when they graduate from high school and they're prepared for college. The thing that I've learned most importantly over the last 5 years is that kids, by the time they reach 7th or 8th grade, they know where they stand academically compared to their peers. And behavior starts to reflect what they see in themselves. And you have an opportunity to change a generation. At Maupin Elementary, in one of the conference rooms, a young man who attended public schools in Jefferson County said this: champions aren't made in gyms. Champions are made from something they have deep inside of them, a desire, a dream, a vision. They have to have the skill and the will, but the will must be stronger than the skill. When you lay your head on your pillows tonight, ask yourself this question: 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, your children or grandchildren may bring someone to your home Well, you have changed that person's life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Ron Claypool regarding Teach Kentucky. Next on deck will be Ken Rosenbaum regarding principal at Norton Elementary School. Mr. Claypool.
Thank you, Board Chair and board members. It's a pleasure to be here today. I just wanted to do a brief introduction of the 15th cohort of Teach Kentucky. You have this in your packet. This has been a big year for us. We went from 2 columns to 3 columns. So that's growth. We're 50% larger. We regard ourselves as national recruitment for local education. So we're scouring literally the whole country to bring the best talent we can find right here to Jefferson County. This group has just arrived. They're in their 2nd week. They're in Teach Kentucky Summer Institute, as well as starting their alternative route master's program at the University of Louisville. So it's a very diverse group. If you want to flip that page over, I was going to quickly walk you through kind of the anatomy of our process. So we had 629 folks across the country start the application process. 171 of those met the academic requirements to be admitted to the U of L alternative route program. And then that represented literally the whole country, 47 states and territories. We were able to invite 66 of those. We're able to attend a recruiting weekend. We do this jointly with U of L and JCPS HR staff. It's a glorious and well-oiled machine now. And then when you kind of move to the cohort, I'm very proud of the geography. So we have participants from Maine, Florida, Texas, California, Washington State, North Dakota, 2 for the first time, and then Chicago. So it really is the whole country coming here to Louisville. Of the 39 that are here, 24 are STEM educators, a very significant need for the district. The board may or may not know that we raised $100,000 privately to give additional scholarships to those participants. So we were very blessed by generous givers in our community that saw that need when we articulated it. This helped us be much, much more competitive nationally. So 62% of the total are STEM educators, 12 are minority, 7 of those are Hispanic. So we're trying to fulfill yet another mission that the district has outlined. Dual content is a tremendous advantage to principals and schools to have the flexibility to have them in multiple content areas in their building. And then of the 36 different institutions, 22 are new colleges and universities, so we're really expanding our platform. So anyway, they're in town and they're all out interviewing, working hard to get their first job, and we're very glad to have our deep, long 15-year partnership with the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Claypool. Ken Rosenbaum is now on deck to present regarding the principal at Norton Elementary. After Mr. Rosenbaum, there will be Deanna Fiera. Mr. Rosenbaum.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to be here. I am Ken Rosenbaum. I'm a retired Jefferson County Public School Administrator. I love Jefferson County, I love the school system, and I love Norton Elementary School. I volunteer there for the sake of all the children. As a lifelong educator, I've had many titles in my career: teacher, administrator, specialist, executive director, many, many more. Of all these titles over the years, my most endearing title is Granddad Science at Norton. I've been Granddad Science for 14 years. I teach every science lesson in every Norton classroom with every teacher and every student throughout the entire year. The joy of watching kids get excited about science is one of my greatest blessings. I love Norton and I love all the kids there. And I do this for the sake of all the children. I'm here tonight with a supportive group of Norton parents. If you're a Norton parent, please stand up. If you're a Norton student, please stand up. Thank you. And if you're a Norton faculty member or retired staff member or staff member, please stand up. So you can see I've brought a group that agree with me. A local school administrator earns loyalty and support such as you're seeing tonight because as a valued educational leader, his or her decisions are made for the sake of all the children. So I'm asking the board and our interim superintendent to please think about these questions. After reading what I read in the Courier-Journal and watching the TV news, I can't help but wonder, is there a witch hunt going on? Is this because a very outspoken man has offended someone in power? If he has, I can assure you he's done it for the sake of all the children. Is there a precedence for firing someone over attendance outside of their school district under residency? Is there a precedence there? I'm willing to bet you, I personally know some folks who are Jefferson County teachers and administrators who send their schools outside of the one they're assigned to because they love the school system and know what's good for their children. They make those decisions for the sake of their children. Is it common practice for a central office to overrule a SBDM committee? Because in this situation, the SBDM committee made a decision about a staff position, and then the board overruled that. So I'm asking you tonight to look at Norton's scores. Please know that the parents and students and faculty have confidence in the school's present leadership. The data for Norton should tell us all the facts. Norton has a culture of excellence, and it's one of the top schools in the district. And that's due to the partnership of the school leaders, the parents, the students, and the staff, all for the sake of all the children. So in closing, I want to quote my old departed uncle, who had lots of sayings. He said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Norton is not broken. It does not need to be fixed. The principal does not deserve to be fired. He needs to remain leading Norton to success, all for the sake of all the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenbaum. I appreciate that, but please understand that that outburst is not the way we conduct business here. That interferes with the business of the board. And I also appreciate the fact that some of you may have held up a banner, but that violates board policy of our meeting, so I'd ask that you keep that banner down. I don't want to obstruct anyone else's view of what's going on with the board's business in public, in this public meeting. Ms. Vieira, it is your turn. After Ms. Vieira, it'll be Mr. David Christopher speaking about Young Males of Color Academy. Ms. Vieira.
My name is Deanna Fajeda, and I'm a Norton Elementary parent. I'd like to address the board about the dismissal of our principal, Mr. Stites. As a parent, I've witnessed Mr. Stites' dedication to his work. Mr. Stites truly cares about children. Sorry. And the children adore him. Mr. Stites greets the students by name in the hallways. He's out in the carpool line alongside his staff every day, and he shows up for every one of our many school events. Over the years, I've been particularly impressed by his open communication with parents and his responsiveness whenever I've contacted him. In addition, he has a proven record of excellence. Norton is a KDE School of Distinction and was recently asked to submit an application to be recognized as a National Blue Ribbon School. And I've always felt that his strong leadership has been instrumental in Norton's success. I think it speaks volumes that current and retired teachers, staff, students, and parents have shown up for 3 rallies in support of Mr. Stites. And as a strong supporter of JCPS, I also think it says something that Mr. Stites believes in our brand and chooses JCPS for his children. It's my hope, and the hope of the Norton community that you see here tonight, that Mr. Stites can return to his position. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Mr. David Christopher speaking about Young Males of Color Academy, and after Mr. Christopher will be Lawrence Wilborn. Mr. Christopher, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dave Christopher. I am the Executive Director and founder of the Academy of Music Production, Education, and Development, AMPED. I'm also a proud partner of JCPS in the Renaissance program and the coding program. I come in support of the Males of Color Academy because I've got to see firsthand what happens when you focus on these young men that need specific types of focus. Just this year, we finished up a program in about a year. We've done this Renaissance and the coding class that we've had. We've had over 50 or 60 students graduate from the coding program. We have 5 students that went on to win an Entrepreneurship of the Year award for Ernst & Young for starting their own web design business. We've had young people start their own businesses. We've had just recently, we celebrated this past Sunday at our awards dinner, 4 of our young people that graduated and are going on to college. What I didn't know was we had a young man that was in our building taking our program who actually graduated a year early. Now, the interesting thing about this young man is that he's a gang member. He was brought into the building by another young man who was also a gang member who had realized that this was a program that focused on his needs, his environment, his situation. This young man came in, and when he came into my office and I found out he had graduated early from high school, I said, well, how did you do that? He said to me with the most straight face ever, I showed up at school and I did the work. Because he found people that cared about him. And I'm proud to say it was in the JCPS school system. Imagine how much more we could do if we could have that focus on these young men that need it so badly. I can't understand why people think that we all learn the same, that we all need the same things, that we talk about social emotional learning and we have all these different things that we talk about that really say we're different, but then we treat everybody the same. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, poor. We did not eat every night. Shared a twin bed with my brother. We slept head to toe. I mean, in the same bed, basically. Wore my sister's shoes to school. But what made the difference in my life was I had my father there who was disabled, and that's the reason I started working at 12, that was able to focus in on me and give me what I needed. To believe that our young men can thrive as much as I love GCPS, thrive in the environment they're in and be successful, it doesn't make sense. We need the Males of Color Academy for these young men. It's been wrong long enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Mr. Lawrence Wilbon. And after Mr. Wilbon, there'll be Uwe Reed and Aiden Knox. Mr. Wilbon.
Good evening, good evening. I'm Lawrence Wilbon, Director of Education and Youth Development for the Louisville Urban League. And I come in support of the Males of Color Academy. And I'll start off by saying that I'm not only here as a youth development professional, I'm here as a father of students in JCPS as well. As I begin to look at data, because part of my job is I have to look at data, and the data is alarming of the academic data when you look at males of color in our district. And so all that leads me to say is we have to do something. If we can't decide on what that something is, right now the best option right now is that we can support the work of this Males of Color Academy. I have the opportunity to lead the work for our Street Academy program, which is geared for 4th and 5th grade males of color in our district. You know, one of the things that we talked about, and Dave actually talked about a little just a minute, about the social and emotional learning piece. One of the things that keeps rising up in our work is that our males of color feels a sense of belonging because we create this environment where they feel like they belong in this environment. And so there's tons of research across this country. There's tons of examples across this country of these type of schools or academies across the country, even as close as Lexington, where the success rate of these individuals is something that's remarkable. You know, I always tell people the only difference between a child that's performing below grade level or those who are really exceeding is this opportunity and access. And so a lot of times we have to remember that the opportunity access is not in every school. There's inequities across the district. And so if we have this inequities across the district and we have an opportunity right now to make this right, I think we need to make this right. And so again, on behalf of the Urban League and our president, and she'll be here soon, I'm sure, to actually lend her voice, we support the Males of Color Academy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbon. Next up is Uwe Reed and Aiden Knox, and after those two will be Bennett Knox. This is regarding the music program.
Yes.
Folks, you have the floor.
My name is Evie Reed, and I am part of the electric orchestra at Westport Middle School. And at first, I wasn't really interested of being part of music at school, but I joined because of my brother, and I went to all of his concerts, and it just looked like a lot of fun, and they were all laughing and just having a great time. So I joined, and I'm glad I joined because it's been such an amazing experience, and I've got to like hang out with friends and play amazing music. Like we get to play rock music and pop music and not just classical music, and I think that's really fun. And it's also made me more outgoing because I used to be this shy person that didn't want to be involved in things, but because of the music program, I've become more outgoing, and I'm really thankful for the music programs.
I'm Aiden Knox, and I'm in the electric and orchestra program at Westport Middle. And I joined because my sister plays violin, and so I went to one of her concerts, and on the last piece, everyone stood up, and they were dancing and playing music, and it all fit together so well, and I decided that I wanted to do that. So I asked our music director, Mr. Corey Zilich, if I could join and play viola, and I thought it would be so much fun, and I wasn't wrong, it was so much fun. And then the electric orchestra came out, and I got to play keyboard because I've been playing piano for a while, and I just think when you play music, you can be, whether you're playing or making it, you can just be so proud of what you've accomplished, and it's just a great thing to have a good music program. And if you love music, then you'll wake up wanting to go to school and wanting to be in the orchestra program. And so if kids want to go to school, and it can make the school better, and making the school better makes the community better and the city better, and a great music program is just a great thing to have, and we should put lots more effort into it and get good music teachers. And so thank you.
Thank you. Next is Bennett Knox to talk about music programming, and after Mr. Knox will be Corey Zilich.
I am Bennett Knox, and I am the proud parent of one of those lovely ladies. And I think you can see from their infectious enthusiasm for the amazing orchestra program at Westport Middle School, led by one of your best and most dedicated teachers, Corey Zilich. I'm here to voice my strong support for increased funding, if possible, by the district for strengthened music education, particularly with dedicated music teachers across elementary schools, and I'll tell you why. My daughter, as you can see, is thriving in her middle school orchestra experience. She's gained so much confidence through the program. It has enriched her overall academic experience, and I myself am a firm believer in the benefits that early learning of a musical instrument, much like learning mastering a foreign language, has on brain development and learning. I believe this improves her ability in other core subjects, and she is, I think, better prepared for high school as a result of it. But to be honest, as much credit that goes to Mr. Zilich for Westport's amazing middle school program and his inspired instruction, my daughter's success began much earlier, in first grade, in fact. And at this point, I would love to say it's because of her wonderful elementary school music program, but much like what I had in the 1970s, where I learned to play the flutophone and played with my fellow classmates and learned how to read music. But that really wasn't our experience at JCPS, unfortunately. Her musical head start is really due to the fact that my wife and I could pay for private lessons from first grade. So my plea to you, as a believer in public education as a force for strengthening our community, and as a citizen who wants my tax dollars to support enrichment opportunities for all children, and especially those whose parents may not have been as fortunate as we have been to provide for their children this supplemental educational benefit. My plea is that you support education of the whole child, with early music education being a key component. Music education engages so many facets of learning: creativity, coordination of one's senses, teamwork as part of an ensemble, the perseverance and grit that comes from struggle and practice, and ultimately the confidence that comes from mastery of an instrument, I think, as you've seen. These skills, as much as any measured by any standardized test, are what truly matter for future success, and it's for that reason that I strongly hope you will consider funding in the future this experience for all JCPS kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time to hear from Corey Zilich regarding the music program, and after Mr. Zilich will be Hannah Armour. Mr. Zilich.
Hello, I'm Corey Zilich. I'm the orchestra director at Westport Middle School, and I'm here today to speak to you guys about the importance of music education and to urge action for JCPS to better support music education. I feel like it's one of the biggest shortfalls that we've got in our school district right now. You might ask, why do we need music in our schools? Until recently, our belief that learning music for young people was based upon intuitive and historical knowledge and often on personal observations. In the last decade, the results of numerous scientific studies are building a solid foundation of evidence that music instruction is not only inherently worthy, but that it helps young minds grow and flourish. Music education builds the intellect. Music research explores the relationship between music education and the development of a young person's cognitive and affective skills. It covers a wide range of topics, from the fascinating way that music making promotes the growth of neural connections in the brain, to music's role as correlating with math and language learning, and to the evidence that IQ scores rise with the increased frequency of music study. New reports are emerging on a regular basis that substantiate our understanding of music's impact on development. But in order for these benefits to reach children, we have to work together to ensure that all children have access to music education. Now, with this proven information that is out there, you would think that JCPS would be feverishly funding our music programs, but however, that's not the case. Here are some startling facts about music in our school district. Right now, there are only currently 33 out of 88 elementary schools that have a music teacher. Our schools are having to make cuts due to limited budgets, and music programs are often one of the first things to be sacrificed. There's a serious inequity among our schools when it comes to music education starting in elementary school. Our middle school, high school band, chorus, and orchestra programs are also extremely underfunded. This past year, there were $700,000 in requested instruments on a $400,000 budget, and I don't think people are asking for things that their kids don't need. So there's a shortfall of about $300,000 of instrument requests alone that aren't being met. There's kids that don't have instruments in their hands that want to. Not only do we not have enough working instruments, but many music programs are being forced to have class in rooms that are much too small to effectively teach music. There are general standards of music rehearsal space that isn't being met in most schools. Ultimately, the child's achievement in music are stifled and they cannot reach their full potential. If we truly want to make our JCPS schools better, I firmly believe that investing in our children and the arts is a vital key to JCPS's vision. Employers and colleges are looking for workers that have self-esteem, confidence, collaborative skills, and creativity. These are all byproducts of the deeper learning that music making engages in the mind. Quality music education, quality, in a child's life is essential to foster these skills within our students. Many of our students are not provided with a quality music making experience, and I believe we need to act quickly to make sure we are providing our kids with the best, well-rounded education and set them up to be lifelong learners. Given all the facts, why would we not want to invest more into music opportunities in our schools for every student? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zillage. Up next is Hannah Armour, and after Ms. Armour will be Rochelle Klontz, both of which will be talking about the music program. Ms. Armour.
Good evening. My name is Hannah Amar. Like Ms. Reed and Ms. Knox, I am a member of the Westport Middle School Electric Orchestra. And I just want to start by saying how much I feel like I've grown as a person since I've joined the Electric Orchestra. And I just feel like having a basic knowledge of music and having that firm music education that I had as an elementary student, it really helped me grow, and it really gave me that, it gave me the knowledge that I needed for for different subjects such as reading and writing and math. And so once I actually joined a different music program, once I joined the orchestra, I just skyrocketed, and I really, I'm getting nervous. I guess I felt more confident in my studies, and I felt I felt safer in the sense that I could do more than what I thought I could do. And since I joined the orchestra in 6th grade, I've done so much. I've joined the Louisville Youth Orchestra. I've taken lessons. I partook in the Louisville Honors Orchestra, which was so much fun, and the Electric Orchestra was so much fun, and I got to make so many new friends, and the students, my fellow students that I participate in the Electric Orchestra with, we share a sort of bond that I don't share with other students. And it really goes to show what music education can do to students socially and academically. So I just want to finish this off by saying putting music education in every school in JCPS can do so much for the students and for the teachers, and I really hope you follow through with this idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Amar. Next is Rochelle Klontz, and after Ms. Klontz, it will be Sebastian Matthew. Ms. Klontz, the floor is yours to discuss the music program.
My name is Rachel Klotz, and I'm here to discuss the effect that having a music program had on me. Music impacted my life 3 years ago for the better. It allowed me to step outside of my comfort zone, improved my grades tremendously, allowed me to grow bonds with new people, and it gave me a set of responsibility and confidence. Music also gave me incredible experiences like performing with the outstanding Emmy Award-winning Mark Wood and getting to see famous violinist Lindsey Sterling in concert, along with seeing black violin in concert as well. Our orchestra has had the opportunity to perform in the Rotunda at the State Capitol, St. Matthews Street Fair, Fresh Times Grand Opening, Light Up St. Matthews, KMA Conference at the Galt House, Live in Central Park, and many more community events. From all of these performances, I gained a sense of confidence in myself and the way I play violin. Music also allowed me to create a strong bond with new people who are now like my second family, aka the Orchid Orcs. Without music, I wouldn't have met the people I know today, and I don't know where I would be without them. That's the beautiful thing about music. It brings people together from all different backgrounds who all share a common interest. It's great for teachers too, because music helps students to become more aware in class and get better grades and test scores. Students who study music become better at memorization from memorizing note names, rhythms, and music notes. And to the parents of students or teachers who say their child/student is irresponsible, put them in a music program and you're covered. When in an orchestra, you have to be responsible for your instrument, bow, music, rosin, and showing up to concerts/events, which puts a lot of responsibility on yourself, so you have to be able to handle it. You have to learn to work as a team and help each other. Music will always be a huge part of my life because it shaped me into the human being I am today. And I have to thank my teacher for getting me here and for believing in us and believing that something like an electric orchestra is possible, because without him, I wouldn't have had these amazing experiences. Music has changed my life, and every student in JCPS should have the opportunity for it to change theirs too, because once you're an Orchid Orc, you're always an Orchid Orc. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Klotz. Our last speaker this evening will be Sebastian Matthew, discussing chronic absenteeism and a solution for that. So, Mr. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sebastian Matthews. I'm a graduate from the University of Kentucky with a double business major, and I founded a company called Key LLC, which is a minority-based company here in Louisville, Kentucky. And what we are trying to do is create a solution to chronic absenteeism. So for those who don't know, chronic absenteeism is also known as truancy, which means on average, 1 out of 7 students will miss about 15 days of school. And when students miss school, they often lead to a lot of disciplinary actions. And at a criminal rate, 100 being the safest on a criminal index, Louisville is the 6th. So therefore, that means for every 150 people you see in Louisville, 1 is subject to be a victim or victimized. And there's 75% in low-income areas that would be by juvenile. So what we created is a technology and an application that allows teachers to take attendance automatically while recording attendance for students by giving them points. So every time a kid comes to school or a football game or the orchestra, anything school-oriented, they get points for it. And these points accumulate into friendly competition amongst other students, And when you get a certain number of points, you will get free rewards from our corporate sponsors or local companies in Louisville. And we've worked hand in hand with GLI, SCORE in Lexington and Cincinnati. We are in the second round of the Vogue Award. And basically, you know, I just wanted to come to the district and see how we could possibly get into a district and, you know, implement this next fall. You know, there is a budget for chronic absenteeism, so, you know, putting a little bit of funding behind this or a little bit of initiative could really make a difference. Because like Ms. Knox said, if students like to come to school, they're going to reward it for coming to school. They'll be out of the streets. They'll learn more. You know, there's a lot of academic, you know, progression that can happen. And if there's nothing the district can do, we started a fundraiser on Fundly.com. So if you Fundly, Fundly.com, and a key, search that. We're just looking for 500 participants to donate $28 by the 28th of June. And that'll be enough to get us on the App Store, update our website, do everything that we need to do. My name is Sebastian Matthews. I'm on Indeed.com, anything, SupportAKey.com, SupportAKey on any social media. We partner with the Boys and Girls Club. We do a lot for the community, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. That concludes our persons requesting to address the board. Now it's time to move on to our next agenda item, which will be action items. The first item up on the actually only action item will be a recommendation for approval of the resolution to initiate recognition of the National Conference of Firemen and Oilers, SEIU 32BJ, as the official representative of the hourly plant operator employees within JCPS. Dr. Razor, I believe you'll be speaking to this item, so I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Dr. Polio and members of the board. This is pretty straightforward, but I did want to have the opportunity to explain it to you. There's really three parts to this resolution. First of all, we are initiating recognition of SEIU as the bargaining unit for the hourly plant operators, and I'll explain that in a second. Secondly, this resolution directs the management of the district to negotiate with SEIU on behalf of the hourly plant operators. And then third, the management is directed, once the successful negotiation of the proposed contract has occurred, to bring it before the board. And that's about as, I was going to say, about as simple as I can make it. I did want to talk about, there were some questions about what about salaried plant operators. And we do have 31 plant operators that are salaried. We've talked with finance and payroll on the easiest way to deal with this, and what we will do as part of the negotiations of this contract, given your approval, is work to convert those 31 salaried plant operators to hourly employees as well. And there is a precedent for this. We actually had to do this last year because of some labor law changes with several of the plant operators. So there is a mechanism in place to do that.
Okay. Is there any discussion about this action item by any members of the board? All right. Hearing no discussion, I would ask for there to be a motion to approve this resolution. Motion made by Vice Chair Wilner. Is there a second? Second made by Member Kolb. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to our next item, which is our informational item. This is our one and only informational item. It's regarding the acceptance of the 2017-18 Student Progression, Promotion, and Grading Handbooks. This is a first reading, and I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Karen Branham.
Good evening, Dr. Polio, Board Chair Brady, and board members. Thanks so much for this opportunity this evening to give you an update on our most recent review of the Student Progression, Promotion, and Grading Handbooks. Joining me this evening from our committee include Jan McDowell, Chris Steele, and Dr. Pam Royster. As you can see, this year we started our work on reviewing the SPP&G handbook back in February. I joined with our subcommittee chairs who are with me this evening to develop and review feedback that we have gotten from schools, from principals, from teachers on things that needed to be revisited in the SPP&G handbook. We organized a broad-based committee that included ETCs from all achievement areas, directors, curriculum specialists, counselors, and also members of our computer education department. And most importantly, we're grateful for our JCTA members who partner with us on this committee. You can see the dates that we met as a broad-based committee to review and really have work sessions on each of the handbooks, elementary, middle, and high school. The members that are with me this evening helped chair the various subcommittees, and we developed a structure last year that worked very well, and so we continued with that same structure this year. Ms. Deely leads the elementary committee, Ms. McDowell, the middle school, and then Dr. Royster, the high school committee, and then I chair the overall committee that spans issues that we address in all three handbooks. Also, in our work, we not only review each handbook, but as we do this work, we really are projecting the changes and revisions on a screen so that all committee members can see those and follow those. We track the changes in each handbook and then develop documents for you, and especially for our new board members where it's your first time this evening to see the SPP&G handbook revisions. We try to make that easy for you to follow. Following that work, we also do feedback sessions where principals, assistant principals, counselors, teachers, and district staff are all invited to review the drafted documents, give us any additional feedback, and then we go back as committee chairs and review that feedback and incorporate it into the handbooks. You have two key documents that we give you. First is a board mock-up, where we simply provide you with a brief overview of each key change in the elementary, middle, and high school documents. Then we provide you with last year's language that's crossed out with a red X, and then the new language that we're proposing for the new document for the 2017-18 school year. The second document that we give you is the SPP&G handbook drafted in full revision with the track changes so that it's easy for you to see what we're proposing and projecting for changes. And so this evening, we want to open it up for any questions that the board may have, and we'll be happy to answer those.
Are there any questions or discussion regarding this item? Member Duncan.
Dr. Branham, I know I've told you this. Your committee works is a model for how committee work should be, and I really appreciate it. Every year the product gets better and better, but it began as a good product. So I thank you all for your service in this. It's just a great way to review and pull changes together. One thing I wanted to ask, you know, it says we're headed, we want our students to progress toward mastery of academics and develop those capacities and dispositions to allow them to be successful in college, career, community, and life. I know how we're measuring our academics. How are we measuring the dispositions and capacities? Have you arrived at ways for us to track that?
Ms. Duncan, that's an excellent question, and I'd be happy to address that for you. So we are working in partnership with Dr. Dossett's office with data management and research to develop those metrics for the capacities and dispositions that are so important in our work with deeper learning. I know that we will continue as those metrics are developed to keep the board up to date. At this time, I don't know that we necessarily see the metrics being translated into a specific grade for each student, but we do know that we will have metrics that track the various capacities and dispositions that are aligned to our work in deeper learning.
Do you have any idea how or when we will see reports of this?
You know, Dr. Dossett is really leading that work, so I'm going to defer to her. Dr. Dossett, would you like to add anything else?
Sure. So actually, at the next board meeting, we're going to share our results from the Comprehensive School Survey. And the Comprehensive School Survey has, we've added items there to get student, teacher, and parents' perceptions around some of the capacities and dispositions that we're targeting in our new strategic plan. So student voice, parent voice, teacher voice through the survey is one way of capturing our progress in building those capacities and dispositions, but there will be other ways to capture that information. Ed Leader 21, which is a group that we partner with has lots of different rubrics that can be used for performance-based learning opportunities that get at critical thinking skills, collaboration, creativity, those types of approaches. So as we expand our work in deeper learning, we'll follow that work with capturing that type of evidence. And it will be multiple ways in which we demonstrate our progress in that.
Alrighty, thank you.
Any other members have any other questions? Member Horn?
Can you talk a little bit about the early college? It looks like it's really exciting, the new law about the graduating in 3 years and how we're gonna try as a state to really encourage that type of thing. And I was, hopeful to see the language changed related to English. I'm trying to find the page. It's page 8. Because I'm concerned that sequential English would, potentially create a conflict with the law that, requires, to really promote early graduation.
Right. Okay. I'd be happy to answer that, Ms. Horn. So first, let me address the question around the 4 sequential English courses and how that really dovetails with our new focus for accelerated learning opportunities for students to promote early graduation. So it could be possible for a student in middle school, in the middle grades, to actually go ahead and take English 1 for high school credit and earn that, and then go on. If they had plans to graduate early in 3 years in high school, they could continue with English 2, 3, and 4 in their 3 years in high school. In addition, we know that the graduation requirements also for high school credit. In our early graduation, we have, of course, the 2 options: performance-based credit for early graduation and then the credit-based option for early graduation. In that credit-based option, the SPP&G also states that the English graduation requirement course can be taken during the year in sequence unless or if it is approved by the principal. So in other words, the principal can step in, the principal can grant permission for a student to take 2 courses simultaneously, to take them in or out of sequence, and that's the principal or his or her designee's option. And then also with the early graduation credit-based option, we know that in that description it says that we'll develop a graduation plan for any student wishing to graduate early, and that plan will be agreed upon by the student, the family, the counselor, or principal. And so there's going to be a flow or a progression that's planned out for any student that would like to graduate early on how the sequencing and evolution of those 4 English courses would take place. Dr. Royster, anything I left out?
I guess just this board member is just really concerned in the larger high schools, the ability to get to the principal to make those decisions to have to get like a waiver, basically.
Yes.
And so I'm concerned about that language, that it impedes and, you know, the early graduation. So I want to raise that,
Yes.
you know, red flag on that.
And so another thing we do with the SPP&G is we always do training sessions with principals. And so that onus is really on us to ensure that the principals are aware of the new changes, that they know of what you've pointed out this evening, and they know that it is their responsibility to meet the needs of any student wishing to graduate early and therefore develop that appropriate sequencing and coursework that's required.
I know. I want to make sure I push back just you know, again, just KRS 158.142 states a local board of ed shall not impose graduation requirements that prohibit a student who is pursuing an early graduation program from finishing high school in less than 4 years. I just think it really is an impediment to that. English is the one that they do require the 4 years. Other states, I'm from a different state. It was much different, and it was, you know, people could accelerate, especially gifted students. So I think it's really important we don't impede students with this English requirement. It's a couple different places in the document. It's on page 8 and page 12. So I think we're impeding it. It's the way I read it. So I just want to really see if staff can look at it and just make sure we're not impeding this, because early college, high school is something that's just phenomenal and very exciting for a lot of students here in Jefferson County.
Go ahead.
So on page 12, I think you referenced the...
I think that's off.
Is it on now? Oh,
Yep.
Hello. Yes, you are. So the point you referenced on page 12 about students only being able to take one English course per year, unless there's a waiver from the principal, that's been in SPP&G for a very long time. Right or wrong, but it's been in there. This is our second year of the performance-based early grad and the graduate before your cohort traditional 22 credits, and it has not yet, from any anecdotal evidence that I have, impeded students on that progress, because they have to have that plan in place for them to be able to do any kind of early grad, whether it's traditional performance-based. And there are options. Some are in sequence and starting early in middle school.
Any further questions? Anyone else? Member Kolb.
I just have one question. It actually concerns the English learners new text that you guys used as a model in the beginning. I just want to see if I'm understanding this. Does every English learner now have to have a program services plan, a PSP? Page 21 is one of the places where it is. It's page 21 in the elementary school. I think it's in all of them, but this one I'm looking at is in the elementary school.
So yes, each student is required to have a program services plan that outlines their instructional and assessment accommodations. So that is correct.
So teachers have to, I guess, tailor teaching to each individual student's language ability. Is that right?
I think that is coordinated through our ESL department. And so if we have an ESL teacher in the classroom working with that regular classroom teacher to provide services to those students, they really work in collaboration to develop that plan and make sure that each student's needs are met.
Okay. I mean, it's a great thing to do. I just want to make sure that we're supporting teachers in doing this, because it's, you know, if you, as I'm sure you know, if you're having to, you know, if you have 28 students,
right,
a few different levels of English ability, it can be quite a challenge to do. So.
And the great thing about our committee, and I'm glad you're asking a question about this, is that Dr. Beardsley, our ESL coordinator, actually serves on the SPP&G committee. So we got the ESL expertise. The new language that's also presented in this section is really from new federal regulations that we changed from being designated our students as ELLs to just English learners rather than English language learners. So really this entire section was updated to be more in alignment and congruent with the new federal regulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion on this item? Anybody have any other questions? Member Duncan?
I just have a question. I just have a question about the reading of this tonight, Chair Brady. Is this considered a first reading?
It is.
When the discussion is finished, I'd like you to call on me at that point.
I'm sorry?
I would like for you to call on me at the point of our discussion when it's finished.
Oh, okay. Just to kind of have the last word?
No,
Or-
just concerning this first reading because
Okay. I have I have some questions about this. Regarding, and I'm going to look at the middle school section of this, which might apply to the middle school and high school. And I'm looking at the changes document that's here. So on page 4, there's a section in there regarding traditional school retentions and exit to non-traditional schools. Could you kind of expand upon this change that's here and discuss what this item is really changing and how that differs from our past policy?
This was a section that we felt we needed to add because we were having some issues with an understanding that there was a difference between the traditional school guidelines that were passed by the board, I believe, last May, and the SPP&G. So the actual grading and promotion policy that's in place in all of the other schools. So, for example, when a student does not meet the expectations of the traditional program guidelines for being promoted to the next grade level, and they decide to move back to another school, or they move to another school, they go back to the regular school, which is under the promotion guidelines of the SPP&G. There have been times when that student would have been promoted had they been in a regular school.
If you could pull it closer, I think they're having to hit the game.
Okay,
So.
and so we needed to clarify that that information needs to be provided to parents at the traditional school level, as well as having counselors and administrators understand this at the regular school level, that it needs to be made clear to them that, and that's why that's in bold print, in order to be promoted to the next grade in the traditional program.
Okay. And
so in short, we have two sets of guidelines. We have guidelines for students in the traditional schools, which were approved by the board earlier this year, and then we have the guidelines in the SPP&G handbook for all schools that are not traditional. So we
Okay.
just wanted to specify that and clarify it.
Okay. The next item on here would be on the next page where it talks about technology graduation requirement option. And one of those items in here is competing in a VEX World Robotics competition. I'm kind of curious as to being part of a team or part of a school's team. I'm not sure, to me, if that really would satisfy a technology requirement. I think that participating on a team is important. I think robotics is important, but I'm not sure if that's really deep enough to really refer to some of the technology needs that's out in today's world and making sure that this our student is ready when they graduate. So I want to talk about that. I'm not sure if you're pulling these guidelines from somewhere else or what the rationale behind that particular item, because to me, competing or just being a member of a team doesn't necessarily mean that you're really actively engaged. It just means you're part of a team. So I'd like to talk about that just a little bit more.
So excellent question. So Dr. Charis Lattimore is our Director of Computer Education Support, and she really leads our efforts with all of the VEX World Robotic competitions across the district. That's been a huge honor for JCPS to be engaged in that work, and we actually hosted the most recent VEX World Robotics competition here in JCPS. So Dr. Lattimore and her team really worked with us on revising this section According to her expertise and experience with VEX World Robotics, the level of rigor that a student has to demonstrate and show as being a participant in the VEX World Robotics, in her professional opinion, exceeds almost any of these others that are listed, and that's why it's in bold as well. I wish you were here tonight. Really, if you'd like some additional information on that, some more specifics, I can get that for you, but I know that Dr. Lattimore highly recommended and actually was actively involved in each one of these performance events that we've listed.
And as I said, I think that those competitions and those events are important, and it certainly is, part of the future. Is we talk about manufacturing and being not really replaced by, foreign labor, and many times it's replaced by automation. And
Right.
we're going to get to a point where we need to tell the machines what to do. So that's part of coding, that's part of robotics, I understand that. But I want to make sure that we have rigorous requirements here, that we're
Yes.
meeting some guidelines, because I want to make sure that this is really meeting something that's important.
Absolutely, and I think if Dr. Lattimore were here, she could take you from start to finish of everything a child has to do leading up to. It's not just the competition and the event itself, it's everything the child has to do leading up to that. The research, the background, the actual building of whatever they're doing in the robotics competition, it's everything that they're learning and doing that leads up to that competition.
Okay.
So.
And the last thing I'll just briefly mention, at least within the changes document, there appears to be possibly some typos here and there, where some hyphenated words are in the middle of the paragraph. That could be a formatting issue. I'm sure it probably is, but just
Yes.
FYI on that.
And in our first draft, Materials and Productions helps us with this. As they go back and send it to editing, they'll catch all of those things.
Okay, so that concludes my concerns. Any other? Vice Chair Wilner.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Steph was asking about, and just wonder if maybe in a Friday update we could just get some information about early graduation. I have no idea how many students are taking advantage of that, if it's at some schools easier than at other schools. So I would love to just get a little report on that.
We'd be happy to.
Thank you.
All right. There's no other discussion. I think Member Duncan wanted to have the last word here.
Yes, I just wanted to know if we would be able to waive the second reading on this and allow them to go ahead and begin the production of this for next year if we have no major changes that need to be made.
According to board policy, we can waive the second reading if it's an emergency. This doesn't meet that requirement for being an emergency, so that would be against policy unless the board votes to change our policy for this particular item. I actually see that. I think that having a second reading is important. Personally, I think that it provides for transparency, and it also provides for board members who have questions to be able to get those answers, and gives us time to be able to make a more informed decision later on. If this was an emergency, I would support that, but I don't think this rises to that level.
Well, let me ask Dr. Branham, does this hurt you if we wait for 2 more weeks?
If we wait for the second reading.
All right.
All right. Without any further discussion, I'd like to see if there's a motion to approve this action item. Is there a motion? Just to approve the first reading. Motion made by Member Horn, second made by Vice Chair Wilner. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to our next item, unless there's any questions. Member Porter.
I would like to ask the board's indulgence. And the speaker list, Reverend Bruce Williams from Bates Memorial Church had called earlier today to put his name on the list. Unfortunately, that information did not get to Angie, so his name was not on the list. He was here for our work session. He's currently here. He would like to speak if the board will allow us to amend the agenda at this time to allow for a speaker. I did go out and speak with him and express my gratitude for him being here to speak. He is unable to be here on June the 27th, which is our next session, where we would have an opportunity to make a decision about the males of color. So at this time, I am asking for an amendment to the current agenda that would allow Reverend Bruce Williams from Bates Memorial Church to speak. He did call today earlier. His name did not make it to the list. I am not asking for an exception to the rule. I am asking that we honor the opportunity for him to speak. He has been here since 4 o'clock, so that is my ask. Would we please make a motion to amend the agenda to have the speaker at this time?
A motion has been made. I'll second it, actually. And all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. So at this time, what we're going to do is allow, you come on up, allow time for Reverend Williams to address the board. This is regarding the males of color. All the same rules apply as they do for the other public speakers section. So you have 3 minutes.
Yes,
Thank you, Reverend Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair and Board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I speak, of course, on behalf of the Males of Color program. I'm a pastor of Bates Memorial Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky, here in the Smoketown community. We have a rather large church and a great contingency of them were here at the work group, and we're really excited about what they were hearing. We've been talking about the Males of Color program for some time. I'm a good friend of Roz Akins. I won't bore you with all the statistical data you know about how people of color in general and males in particular seem to be at a race to the bottom of academics, not just here, of course, you mentioned earlier in the work group, but all over the country. And as you can imagine, if that's frustrating for you, you can imagine how frustrating it is for parents, in particular, African American community and people of color in general, because it seems like whatever adjustments we make or things we try to do to fix it, we still seem to end up back at the bottom again. But I think the reason why there was standing room only here earlier today is because there is some hope given the program that Roz Akins mentioned, because it's a program that succeeds. It's not something you have to guess about whether it will do well or not. She's having success at an incredible rate, and so we have this opportunity to do something really positive. I noticed in the video that was given earlier, you used the term pipeline, and you're familiar with school to prison pipeline, which often is the path for those who are at the bottom. This program that she's initiating and that you're considering is a program that has the capacity to change the trajectory of students who don't feel like there is much hope. I have a 5,000 member congregation, and we hear about that on a regular basis. And as a community of faith that is concerned about the education of our children, that matters a lot to us because it matters a lot to them, just like it matters to you. And so we have this opportunity to change the trajectory from prison to pipeline to people of promise and prosperity. On your mission statement, you mentioned that you wanted them to be productive students and productive citizens in a diverse community. Well, we have this opportunity to offer it for them. I suspect that if we don't do that kind of thing or do that, it will increase the level of frustration for people who already feel hopeless already. And so, as you would agree, students deserve the best that JCPS has to offer. All of them do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, or Reverend Williams. And I do apologize for the miscommunication that happened earlier to leave your name off that list.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to our next item, which will be the consent calendar. Currently, there are 0 speakers talking about or that wish to present about anything on the consent calendar. Are there any board members that wish to pull down any items from the consent calendar? Member Duncan, which items would you like to pull down?
R.
R. Anyone else? Member Horn, do you have your hand up? Yes. You may want to speak into the microphone. I believe you said item N.
And then the item that was pulled, the independent audit contract, I'd like to have an explanation.
Okay. I believe an explanation was given to you earlier via email from the superintendent, so I'm going to let the superintendent's email speak for itself. When you said item N, can you tell me which item N you're referring to?
It's N3.
N3.
It's, let me see, wait. It's N1.
N1.
The small grants.
Okay. All right. Any other items, Member Cole?
I'd just like to pull 07 for a separate vote because it relates to Spalding University, my employer.
07 that will also be, all these will be separate votes, just so we can pull them down. The 0.7, anyone else with any other items? And I'm going to pull down item K and contract number 6. That's on that. Okay. So what I'd like to know is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item K, item number R, or letter R, item N as in Nancy, .1, and item O as in Oscar, .7. Other than those 4 items, is there a motion to approve our consent calendar? Motion made by Vice Chair Wilner, second made by Member
I'd like
Duncan.
to have a discussion before we approve it.
That is not, this is going to be the consent calendar. The item you're referring to is not on the consent calendar. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving forward with the consent calendar, please vote at this time. All right. All right. There's 6. All those opposed? 1. So the vote is 6-1 to approve our consent calendar. Moving on to our next item will be item K, which is the item I pulled down. This item is referring to, let's see, where is it? Recommendation for approval of professional services contracts of $5,000 or more. The item in particular that I would like to discuss is contract number 6, which is, let me bring this up. The item regarding the Archdiocese of Louisville. I think Ms. Harden, this was an item that you're presenting. Is that correct? That was up for a recommendation?
Actually, the department head normally responds, but
I'm sorry,
I may be able to answer the question.
All right. The question I had regarding this is that the services that are being rendered according to the contract, say contractor will provide professional development to teachers within the Archdiocese of Louisville, E3, Education Excellence and Equity in Classroom Instruction for June 27th through 29th of this year, in which is this particular item is attached, and incorporated herein by reference. At all times during the term of this contract, contractor will be independent of the Archdiocese of Louisville and any religious organization in the provision of the services. My question actually is, since this is a contract for development of teachers within the Archdiocese of Louisville, and that there is a cost that's associated with this, I don't have the cost. I think it was like $16,000 or something along those lines. I could be mistaken. I can pull it up here in a second. But since that is, that's in reference to this, I don't understand why this is coming through JCPS.
We have funding such as Title I, federal funding, that goes through JCPS as a private school. And so we manage all of the contracts through this board, through JCPS, and they follow our rules, that type of thing. And then we have to report to the feds or to the state any of those expenditures. So it is a process that we use on Title I in particular, and Title II, they also get funding there.
I've seen these things that come through before, and I've asked questions about it before, but this one really doesn't make any provision, or at least within the contract itself states that these funds are coming through or designated specifically for the Archdiocese. So it gives the impression, at least to me, that JCPS is from our own budget is paying for service for an entirely different school district. In the future, can we have some type of verbiage in here that clears this up so when the public looks at this or board members look at this, there's a really good explanations and transparency on this item so we understand clearly where the funding mechanism is coming. I understand that we're acting as a pass-through for these funds to go there. I'm perfectly fine with us supporting other organizations within our community. I just want to make sure that that is clear so there's no confusion from the public or from me as a board member.
Yes.
And Chair Brady, if I can.
I think that microphone still needs to be turned on. One of those two. I think it's on now.
I know I provided a response. Someone asked this question prior to the board meeting, and I know Cordelia is struggling with her voice. So we do act as the fiscal agent for Title I and Title II for private non-public, and which includes our Catholic schools. So basically what it means is the private non-public schools receive their own allocations for Title I and Title II federal dollars. And then, so basically what the contracts that you're seeing on the board agenda tonight are two contracts that are really for the Archdiocese. They're using their own Title II funds, but JCPS acts as the fiscal agent and the conduit, so it requires the Board of Education to approve those contracts. So I hope that helps provide a little more background, but we can get that to you in writing as well.
Sure. And I was thinking that the other item that deals with the Archdiocese, wasn't that where we were getting services for interpretive services from the Archdiocese?
Yes.
So we're actually getting a service that we're purchasing. I understand that contract.
Yes.
This one looked a little different, so that's what threw me.
Okay.
All right. So what I'd like to do, since this item is pulled down, I'd like to make a motion that we accept item K, and that there's a motion to accept item K so we can move on to our next item. Motion made by Member Duncan, second made by Member Cold. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to item R. Item R in this case is the recommendation. Actually, I take that back. I'm going out of order. Let's go to item N, and this will be N.1. And that is going to be the acceptance of donations and small grants.
I just really wanted to pull this out to highlight the extraordinary gifts that the small cities in the Jefferson County are making to JCPS, and just celebrate the partnership. We had Shively, the city of Shively, donate $15,000 to Western. Yeah, for a computer lab. We have $10,000 from Bowen to Bowen from the city of Linden. Middletown is all over this. There are, J-Town has donated over $11,000. It's really wonderful to see this partnership. We have 88 small cities, and they have, we share their constituents up here, and I just wanted to pull it out to celebrate it and just really point that out. It's just there's just a lot of good things going on with our partnership with our League of Cities and the small cities in Jefferson County.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. Thank you, Member Horn. Motion to approve item R. Motion made by Member Cole. Oh. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I was looking at what I wrote down here. Item N1, motion to approve item N1. Motion made by Member Horn, second by Member Geese. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're going to move on to item O.7. This item was pulled down by Member Kolb. As I understand it, this is, do you want to speak to this and as to why you pulled this item?
Well, I just want to abstain from the vote since Spalding University is my employer.
All right. So is there a motion to approve item O.7? Motion made by Member Geese, second made by Member Porter. All those in favor? All opposed? All abstaining? So 6 approved, 1 abstention. Motion passes. Now it's time to discuss item R. It's our last item to be pulled down from the consent calendar, or the consent agenda, rather. That item will be the recommendation for approval of the Student Support and Behavior Intervention Handbook and the Student Bill of Rights. Member Duncan, I believe you pulled this down?
Yes, I just want to go back and talk a little bit more about 3 areas, basically. The others you tried to address, and I know it's really not time for a total update of things, so we were just trying to update certain parts. But I really am concerned about encouraging people to make anonymous complaints without, I don't feel like it's complete without also urging them to name people, witnesses, somebody that somebody can talk to, or a specific charge, something that happened specifically. I think we get anonymous complaints of somebody bullying somebody, and then we don't know, all we know is the name of the person, and then we have to seek who the victim is because that person's anonymous, and maybe they're not reporting on themselves, maybe they're reporting on behalf of someone else. But it's really bothersome to me that we announce, we'll go ahead and make anonymous complaints and we'll investigate when it needs to be more detailed than that. And I feel like due process is violated whenever there's no more information given than that. It's almost just like a tool to harass somebody. I'm going to complain on Mr. Brady, so I'm going to complain he's bullying. And then, bam, that triggers an investigation. And I don't know how. I would add more in the handbook if you can assure me that an anonymous complaint has to have more than this, then I feel better about it. But what do you discuss about this?
Well, and Dr. Averett, you may want to come up too. This is actually obviously the part of our handbook that resolves any of our procedures around the bullying hotline or ethics point violations, things of that nature, go through our bullying staff. I don't think that we have, again, I've said this to you, raging issues with reports that don't have enough to investigate, and if we don't, we can't. I think too, to make sure that you understand also, when you mention due process, an allegation doesn't mean that anybody's formally being accused of anything. When you say investigation or I say investigation, that can look a lot of different ways. For instance, if a person calls in and says, my child is being bullied, I don't want to say my name, this is the individual that's bullying my child, etc., there will be an investigation by the school to even substantiate whether it is a claim that is going to be investigated. Does that make sense? So there's initial investigation, and we actually make sure that we close those cases and know, and it's perfectly plausible that schools or adults or department heads or whoever will say not substantiated, and it won't go any further than that. So it doesn't initiate any kind of formal charge in which that person doesn't have their side told or doesn't have an opportunity to have that entertained at the same time. Does that make sense?
Well, I think in terms of students it does, but in terms of adults, it seems that there have been cases of investigations on people triggered by a complaint that's anonymous, and then there's a very serious investigation done. As soon as an adult in the building is under investigation, everybody knows it, but they don't know exactly who to talk to when they go in there, so they have to talk to everybody.
So let's get clarification. Dr. Averett, can you speak to how your staff makes decisions around adult-based complaints on the bullying tip line? I don't know what their procedural process is to decide whether they're going to move forward and investigate or whether they're going to, whether they've got enough information. Do you know how your folks handle that?
We, are you referring to if a student?
If it's an adult claim, if it's a claim that an adult is doing something that's inappropriate or bullying in nature.
To a student?
No, it sounds like you're talking about an adult-to-adult claim.
An adult-to-adult claim or an adult-to-student claim.
Okay, so she's speaking on either.
Adult to student will go through the process of CPS and through compliance and investigation and that route. But if it's adult to adult bullying, then I think, John, I'm going to defer to you because that would go through your office with compliance and investigations.
Correct.
Right.
Or Dr. Razor's office if it was like with a Stan Law criminal, if it was criminal. Correct, compliance and investigations, or Dr. Razor if it was criminal.
Well, is what's referred to in here primarily anonymous complaints on students? Is that what we're encouraging? Anonymous complaints, adults on students, or student on student?
It was
or
mainly for students. The process came up because some students did not feel comfortable reporting, and there were various reasons, such as the main one was fear of retaliation, or maybe they were fearful that someone would see them in the school reporting it, and some of our various student groups were feeling uncomfortable, and so that was the point also, was to have an avenue where they can make a report anonymously, and then it would be investigated at the school level to determine if it is substantiated or not.
See, I've had parents complain who have complaints against particular students, and as long as that instruction is in there, to be sure and name witnesses, because that would be so much more helpful than to just make an anonymous complaint on somebody, and then we're trying to figure out who the victim is. So I just feel like there's not enough direction given to the person who's making an anonymous complaint. It seems to stop short there to me, and I feel like we need to give them a little bit more, because I have people call me all the time and haven't made complaints, have been afraid to tell, but have, and they know witnesses, but they haven't told witnesses. And so, I'm encouraging them to give the names of witnesses so that the school can investigate. But the way it's written here, there's no encouragement to give witnesses. And I just think that's an important addition that needs to be in there. Okay, well, that's one thing. The other things are wording kinds of things I think later on we might be able to talk about, but not tonight. But the restorative practice part, when we are to restore positive relationships, and restorative practices, we hope will restore relationships, but they may not have been positive to begin with. And to restore positive relationships, that's going to be up to the victim, how the victim receives this. Now, I feel like in restorative practice, we have nothing given, no guidance given to victims. And I feel like I wish we could spend a little time on restorative practices so that people understand we know there are victims, and it's up to the victim to be involved in this process with whoever the offender was. But we spend a lot of time on the offender and not on the victim. And I feel like I wish we could give a little more guidance to victims under restorative practices, so they know, look, you do count. You are going to count in this process, because it doesn't feel like that. And the last thing, board expectations. We've never had board expectations in this handbook before.
You mean are you speaking of board responsibilities?
Yeah, the section that says board responsibilities that tells our expectations. Mm-hmm. That was a surprise to me to read that section, because we've not talked about this goal of reducing suspensions and reducing disproportionality in discipline. We've not really come to a consensus about that. And so, because we have different interpretations, I certainly have different interpretations of these particular areas. To expect us to want schools to make plans to reduce suspensions, all the superintendent has to do is say, I don't want any more suspensions, and people will stop suspending. But it doesn't mean kids out there stop doing things wrong.
She's on page 16.
Yeah.
I think we're on the same, we're on the same page, correct?
Right, that's it. But I'm just saying, I don't think this needs to be in there because I don't agree with either part of this. I would want this rephrased. This is not phrased.
Can I make sure I'm clear on what, the whole section isn't new. The only, are you just talking about the last sentence that's green?
Yes, the last part of it that addresses
Expect schools to develop and implement research-based, data-driven plans to reduce lost learning time and disproportionality and discipline.
Right. Reduce suspension, which is lost learning time, reduce anything that takes them out of the classroom, and reduce disproportionality in discipline. But see, we all don't agree on that, and for me to say that's something that we've all discussed and come to a conclusion on, I don't feel comfortable about that.
Understood. Are you saying that you don't agree that it needs to happen, or the how?
The last section I don't think needs to be on there.
Okay.
I really don't. I mean, we expect plans for addressing, discipline, and however we want to reduce discipline offenses. I expect that, but when you begin to talk about reducing suspensions, I want to reduce offenses first that, because you can have the suspensions and still, or reduce those and still have offenses going on. It just means we're not paying attention to them. So that's not a goal to me. So anyway, I'm just saying, I don't think that particular section needs to be in there.
Ms. Duncan, can I jump in on that?
Yep.
And I can't comment on whether it should be under the Board of Education responsibilities or not. That's for you all to decide. I can say under central office staff responsibility, which would include myself in a few weeks, and staff, I don't think you can separate the two. That I think reducing offenses and having a plan to do that is a necessity for every single school. That's the before talking and making sure that systems are in place to prevent discipline occurrences, infractions from happening. That doesn't mean to reduce our expectations of students along the way, but I think, at least from a central office staff, that I would agree that we have to implement research-based, data-driven plans to ensure that we reduce those offenses, and not separate it into, well, we're reducing our expectations of schools because of that.
Right.
So I just wanted to be clear. I think that statement definitely would fit into central office staff at a minimum. Now, whether it goes to the board responsibilities, I think that would be your call there.
Yeah, that's what I definitely agree. I don't think it's something that should be pulled under us. I really don't. I think we've never, I don't remember that we've had anything like that in there before. So I would rather that not be there. Now, everybody else might all feel like they want to, but it will stop me.
Mm-hmm. And that's conversation clearly that you will have with peer board members, and the decision will clearly be whatever I do after this. So if there's an amendment to remove it or move it, then as we have done in the past, I will obviously meet the needs of your all's decisions. It's not me, it would not be me that would choose, right? So, me, Katie Zeitz.
Okay, so if I'm going to just go ahead and propose that we remove that particular section, have that attributed to central office staff and not to board responsibilities there.
Pardon the interruption, but would you please word that in the form of a motion?
Well, I will move that the section that spells out board responsibilities in regard to
the fifth bullet.
Right.
The fifth bullet underneath.
Fifth bullet.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
yes.
I thought that might simplify things.
I move that be removed right now until this board can talk about that. And, we may, everybody may come back and want it, but we've not really discussed it.
Let me clarify that by saying you're making a motion to amend
To amend that.
Thank you.
To omit it.
To amend
omitting.
this document to admit that fifth bullet.
Right.
Okay. So there's been a motion that's made. Is there a second on Member Duncan's motion? Second made by Member Geese. All those in favor?
Can we have
Discussion.
Yes, there's a moment for discussion on this, on the amendment that's on the floor. Member Cole.
Do you want to go?
No, you go ahead first.
Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out what the exact issue is here, because what I'm seeing is we're expecting schools to develop and implement research-based, data-driven plans to reduce lost learning time and disproportionality. Those research-based, data-driven plans are out there. They exist. Things that accomplish these goals through the very mechanisms you're mentioning, eliminating or reducing student misbehavior so it doesn't keep happening again and again. Those things are out there. So as a board, not only am I in favor of this, but this is something that I want schools to know, that as a board, we're expecting them to do these sorts of things. Reducing lost learning time is really, that's unless I'm mistaken, the heart of our strategic plan, is it not? Is maximizing every minute that we have with students in the classroom. And again, I'll just repeat, I apologize if I'm a broken record in saying this, but we know from research study after research study that black students and white students misbehave at the same rates. So if we have disproportionality, and it's not a problem that's unique to Jefferson County by any stretch of the imagination, it's a national issue. But if we know that black and white students misbehave at the same rate, if we know that,
Where is
then,
that? Where is that?
Linda, I've emailed you references again, and after our, well, hold on a second because I have the floor, but after our meeting at the Unseld Center, I sent out an email with at least, I want to say 10 references. Is that accurate? That's been shown in study after study. So we can't just reject science. We can't reject scientific findings because they don't, well, for whatever reason, we just can't reject them. So so I think it would, it fits with our strategic plan. It would be irresponsible of us not to give this message to schools that we expect this of them, and that we're going to support them in doing it.
I think Member Porter had something to say, and then I'll shift it over. So Member Porter.
Whoops, sorry. I think that this is something that sometimes we have to agree to disagree, and I think there might be different opinions about this one statement. What I see is that we're stating the board's expectations about what schools have to do. And as we move forward collectively as a district, this is stating that. And if that one statement is something that some of us agree on and some of us do not agree on, because clearly we do know that there is some disproportionality in this district. So I don't want to belabor the point. I would just ask that we vote what we feel is appropriate in our heart as we talk about the expectations of the board. I guess that's it.
Member Geese, then Vice Chair Wellner.
Sure. I think, as I read this, expect schools to develop and implement research-based, data-driven plans to reduce lost learning time and disproportionality in discipline. If I'm understanding Member Duncan's argument correctly, I think that the heart of the disagreement lies towards the end here in plans to reduce lost learning time. Would you say that's correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just making sure I dissect the argument correctly. And I think the fear is by putting that wording in, and this may be as simple as just a slight adjustment in wording or clarification, plans to reduce lost learning time. I think that Member Duncan may be, and correct me if I'm wrong, may be concerned that plans to reduce lost learning time may be misinterpreted almost as a doublespeak in saying, don't suspend students at all costs. When, again, I've said many, many times, suspension should be the last thing that a school teacher, principal, whomever
Understood.
resorts to. However, when it's put in this way, quote, plans to reduce lost learning time, I wonder if maybe some district administrators, teachers, those who are in the schools every day see that as, and would make people a little apprehensive about, even if it was in the best interest of the child, the school, everyone else in that classroom, to suspend, again, as a last resort. I wonder if that would give those in the community pause in making that decision. And again, I believe and go on the record in believing that that is an absolute last resort, but I also am not in favor of taking away that in a school's toolkit in order to maintain a good learning environment in proper order within a school. So I think that's maybe the crux of the problem, and I'd be interested to hear what Member Duncan has to say, if that's correct or incorrect.
Before we do that, I'd like to
Absolutely.
give Vice Chair Wilner a chance to speak, and then we'll, if no one else wants to speak, then we'll shift it back over to Ms. Duncan to address that point.
Okay.
Vice Chair Wilner?
Thanks. Well, you had said that for the board to discuss it, and the only time we really can discuss it is in a public forum, and here we are. So I'll just, just say that I stand by this wholeheartedly. For me, it's a bedrock value. And if I were going to wordsmith it at all, and maybe this was something we could come to by consensus, but expect schools to develop and implement research-based, data-driven plans to improve behavior and to reduce lost learning time and disproportionality and discipline. So that's like the flip side. It's like we're saying help kids, teach kids to make better choices, make better behaviors as part of that.
Dr. Wilner, can I ask just quickly, you said to improve, I've got the beginning, to improve behavior and reduce lost learning time, and how did you want to amend the end, or what was your
I didn't
suggestion?
make any, I just added to.
I'm just curious, so if someone brings it back up, I have it here, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so.
All I did was insert
reduce lost learning time.
Plans to improve behavior,
I got that part.
And then everything.
Perfect, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Just
in case.
Just clarification, no amendment has been made for that particular.
I understand.
Motion. So, Member Duncan, do you want to comment, or does that satisfy your concerns?
That'll satisfy my concerns.
Just to clarify again, there's not an amendment to actually make that change. What's on the floor right now is amendment to strike this entire bullet point. Is there any further discussion before we move on? Because there's been a motion and a second to actually vote. Member Horn?
I mean, I don't think this is totally out of context with this spot, but plans to reduce learning time, lost learning, don't necessarily have to do with like behavior all the time. Because people lose learning because of absenteeism. And so like I'm really excited to see that that's an expectation like within this category, because like I'm really excited about like what that guy, that Aki, is like improving like absenteeism as a form of like lost learning time, because it's totally correlated to proficiency and distinguished, if you're not at school. So I don't know, adding that language just may cloud it for me. Like I'm fine with it how it is. And it may be the board, the majority of the board are fine with it how it is. But I just think by adding a behavioral thing into it, it may cloud it for me, because I'm not sure that lost learning time is always behavioral. Just to be honest, I mean, I'm not an educator, but it seems like it's not.
Member Geese?
Do you think it would be an agreeable solution to make it as clear as possible by adding in the behavior point that Member Wilner suggested, and also making a point regarding attendance or absenteeism to improve behavior and/or attendance?
Okay, there's no response to that, so I'm going to move on. Member Duncan, did you have any further? We done? Dr. Polio, if you wish to chime in.
I just want to be very clear on this. Our expectations of schools, especially starting July 2nd, and expectations of us as support of our schools. I believe we have to improve behavior, and we need to improve behavior. I think our TEL survey results tell us that. We will do that. We're going to work actively to make sure we have positive culture and climates in our school, which a piece of that, as I've said, is improve student behavior. We will work to do that diligently over the coming months. At the same time, we expect schools and leaders at schools to be actively working to reduce behavior issues in the school and have plans in place, just like we would expect plans to improve attendance, just like we expect plans to improve proficiency. All of those things are a part of effective planning process that great leadership and great schools do. We'll expect to see that in all of our schools. So I believe we can do both, and we will do both.
Okay, I'll just withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And then we'll just keep it as it is, with the understanding that Dr. Polio expressed of what our expectations are. And when I almost feel like we got pulled into something there that not all of us are agreeing about the terms on. So, but I will, those interpretations that Dr. Polio expressed, I fully support.
Okay. So the motion has been withdrawn, so therefore the item is still on the table for item R to be approved.
The famous
after all that, it's
item
still not
R.
done. So is there, now are you making a motion or do you have an issue? Okay, so there's no further discussion?
Second.
All right, so hang on, I haven't called for a motion yet. I just want to make sure everyone had a chance to actually, is there any discussion not regarding this particular motion, but about item R? Okay, so is there a motion? Motion was made by Member Horn, second was made by Member Kolb to approve item R. All those in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so 5 in favor, 1 abstention, one in opposition. Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So that concludes our consent agenda. Now we're going to move on to, or I should say consent calendar. Now we're going to move on to our next item, which is a tie bid. So I'm going to look to Vice Chair Wilner, who just realized that there's a tie bid, to draw one of our, to draw the winning bidder. So don't forget to turn on your mic. You want to introduce that bid? So while she's doing that, I'm going to talk about the bid. This is a tie bid on bid ID number 7403. This is automotive bus repair parts and services is a line item.
All right, and the winning bid is Napa Auto Parts.
All right, is there a motion to accept the tie, this new winning bid? Motion made by Member Geese. Is there a second? Second made by Member Horn. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to our next item, which is our board planning calendar. Any discussion regarding the board planning calendar? Member Horn.
I just wanted to thank the board for putting, there's in August at the first meeting, there's a work session, and you just don't know how exciting it is to me to have that there. But that's the board priorities. I've been wanting this for 2 years since I've been on the board, and it gives us an opportunity as a board to discuss the priorities and get this for 18-19. So this is the stuff of not this year's budget, but the 18-19 budget priorities. So it's very exciting, so that we hopefully, because we might just have that meeting, we'll try to gear up for that, to plan for that meeting. And then also, I'd want to try to request that we have the finance committee, we have an audit subcommittee. We were tasked by the board with making a recommendation on the MAG salary study, and that came forward to the board in the form of the increased funding for the independent audit to review the study. So the question is, for the calendar, we have a bunch of non-JCPS affiliated experts that, we have probably a couple options out here. You know, the first option was to try to review the study to provide assurance to the board and management the decision can be made with that data. If the board and Dr. Hargens had pulled that agenda item because of board concerns, if that's the case, then I guess the other option that the audit committee had was to start a new compensation study. And so the call for that came in 2011 with the management study that was identified the various findings including D10, which noted the need to assess staffing and compensation. And then the state auditor in 2014 noted in finding 3 and other areas that compensation was without a solid basis. And JCPS management followed up, noting efforts included the salary study, which that was supposed to address the concerns raised in the 2 prior management audit and also the state auditor's audit. So the question is for the board, do we want to go ahead and have a public conversation, just not about salary studies, but just to talk about planning in 2000, potentially it would be 2018, just kind of looking ahead to where this would fit within our calendar. So I just wanted to make sure I raised that concern because it was raised by 2 separate audits and it's now totally off the agenda. And I totally understand that the current MAG study was potentially, what's the word for it, discredited. And so we may not want to rely on it, but it does put us in a pickle because we are under audit to actually do something about this issue. So I just wanted to raise it as a planning calendar issue. Know that we do have a community group within that is probably going to recommend that we do a new study event, because that would be the response if we don't want to look at this current one. So just that's the question for the calendar.
I don't know about other board members, but I would think that that might be a discussion to be better had on what you had mentioned earlier regarding board priorities, since you talked about that being in the 18-19 timeframe. So that might be a better part of that broader discussion to be had on the August 8th meeting that you have right there. So any other further discussion regarding the board planning calendar? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to receive the board planning calendar? Motion made by Member Kolb, seconded by Member Duncan. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to board reports. Discussion about board reports. Member Duncan.
Just want to briefly say that the policy committee met and we did discuss 2 areas, and we have another area that we're going to take up next time. But one area that we arrived at 2 board members supporting was the placement of speakers on our agenda, and we had several options that we looked at, and 2 of us supported the option of the speakers coming right after the superintendent's report, before the action items, and all speakers at that point, the way we did tonight. And I'm sure the board will get all the other options, since we've not really decided yet what the recommendation part is from that committee. But 2 board members on the committee did support the placement of speakers before action items, all speakers. And we make that a permanent change on our calendar or our agenda. Another area that we talked about was hiring, and we discussed the changes from the legislature. One change from the legislature allowing relatives to now be employed as substitutes, and relatives of members of the district on staff and board members can now serve as substitutes. That was changed by state law, and I guess it goes into effect in July. Another area of hiring that we also looked at was a discussion around our change in practice of hiring people with felony records, convictions, and we have made, we're just discussing that right now. We're not finished that discussion. The next policy meeting, everybody is welcome to come and continue that discussion, because right now present policy says we do not hire anyone with a felony conviction. the proposed change coming from what the language is from KSBA and from the state is that we only exclude people who have committed sex crimes or violent offenders. All other felony convictions would not be automatically not considered. The superintendent would have discretion in deciding which felony offenders, if those had any relationship to the jobs that they were seeking within the district. But anyway, we had a discussion around that, and we will welcome more people to come to our next policy meeting on that. And also, we're also going to take a look at our racial equity in education policy that's been proposed. But we did not have time to get into that. But anyway, just wanted to update us on our policy committee.
A question, if you wouldn't mind. Would you mind, if you know, to tell us and also the public when your next policy meeting might be if they wish to attend?
Well, we didn't set a date because we wanted to wait until after our retreat, and then probably will be in August, probably be the first Tuesday in August.
All right, so we'll tentatively put that down.
Yeah.
All right, further discussion, Member Geese.
A board report.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, discussion about the board report.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I would just like to thank Member Duncan for leading that committee and serving as our chairwoman, and Member Kolb is serving as our vice chairman, and all of the members of the community who come. We really do have an excellent group of people who are able to discuss things quite well with one another, and so for that I'm very grateful. And of course very grateful to be serving alongside my peers in the community on the policy committee. It's something that I think is very important and something that I think is worthwhile to get that community voice and input. And so just wanted to offer a sincere thank you to all of our volunteers out there who sacrifice their time for the betterment of JCPS and our entire city of Louisville. Other than that, I wanted to report on having the great honor to attend our 2017 retiree function that was held at the Olmsted last week. I almost felt like a member of a wedding party, because we were housed at the Olmsted, which is a beautiful venue. Ms. Robinson did a great job putting that together. I think she, well, and for my comment on feeling like a member of a wedding party, we were up on a big high-rise table, seated in front of all of the retirees, so it was really nice to see that. And I feel like that venue and the amount of effort that was put into it really communicated how much we value their service as teachers throughout the many years, teachers and other support staff of this district. I was sitting up there. Ms. Robinson asked for all of the retirees to stand, and I looked out there and I saw my 7th grade English teacher. So that was very special for me to get to go up and speak with her. I hadn't seen her since I was in the 7th grade. Miss Dawn Scanlon. She is getting, well, she's retired, so I doubt she's watching this. But just want to say thank you in particular to my teacher, who put in all of those great years of service for our district. And other than that, I cannot believe that it is almost 9:20 and we're almost finished.
Hey, don't jinx us. All right, Member Horn.
You can see my board report is attached from the Finance Advisory Committee. Just to report, we had a great meeting, and we also have a committee for budget, a subcommittee for budget. We will be announcing any kind of subcommittee meetings, just as any other special meeting according to when we were formed. It said we'll give notice, and that will be provided if there ever is one. Also for the advisory audit and risk team, we'll notice any subcommittee meetings. But we're going to be meeting this Thursday, and we're going to review we had, no offense, Jonathan, we had just a few typos in our original charter. So we did rewrite it just to clean it up just a little bit. So it's not really substantively much different, but it cleans it up a little bit. And so we're going to submit that. We thought we'd submit it to the policy team first, so that they could review it before it comes to the board, because they can catch any further clerical errors that I've made. And then also, one of the things that came up was the policy that created us, which was the advisory policy. It's kind of framed a little odd in the current policy guidebook, and so we're going to send that through the policy team too, to try to see if we can just change the heading, because it's under like complaints, and it just seems like it's such a cool committee structure that it's just a little oddly worded. So we're going to send that to you guys, Linda, and you're going to get that. And then also we can be dissolved like totally like on the spot. So the feedback from some teachers in the room, which was kind of interesting, was like, hey, can we at least have 30 days notice? So we're going to send just kind of some minor things through policy team, and it's also a way for us as a finance committee to get the squeaks out of how this procedure will work, you know, with kind of some benign little policy changes to see how we can send it to the policy team, any kind of finance policy, and then we can send it to the board via the policy team. It seems like it's appropriate. And then if the policy team has any finance policies, we're happy to look at them and send them back through policy, you know, to lighten your load. So we can kind of work together as a team, but we're just trying to be over here and trying to work under our strategic plan and be a highly functioning team according to that focus area 2. And I think with Cordelia's leadership and John Callipy and Eddie Munns, we are so far achieving that goal. I'm probably getting in the way of it a little bit. So I will, you know, we have one of our members in the room too. Just give a shout out to Angie. Thank you for being here. And thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to serve in this role as Finance Advisory Committee Chair.
Member Kolb.
I just want to give major congratulations to the team that put together the Deeper Learning Conference last week. It was awesome. I was there all 3 days. It was awesome except for one thing, and that's the coffee there was $3.75, and it was awful. So next year there better be better coffee. And I'm not joking about that either. Okay, like it's going to be somebody's rear end. It was really great, and the fact that I think over 1,500 teachers turned out on their summer break to attend a conference, speaks volumes to the dedication of the teachers that we have and their commitment to the strategic plan and their desire to really do something ultra meaningful in education. And I'm really excited about the possibility of that conference becoming a regional, if not national, attraction for a lot of folks in the future. So very, very well done. Even Mike Razor's presentation was pretty good. Once he got his slides to work, yeah, they were good. So,
Day 2 was much better.
So he says, yeah, exactly. Great job, team that put that together.
Further discussion? Member Porter?
I would like to concur with the comment about the Deeper Learning professional development opportunity at the fairgrounds. It was great to be in the space. Thank you, Twitter, for remembering that I was in the space multiple times. I appreciate that. But also, one of the things that I learned from that is it's a model for what we should be doing for professional development for other aspects of our strategic plan. And I realize that we put a lot of money to that, but there are other areas in our strategic plan that deserve that same kind of money and that kind of focus, in that we're using our local teachers to do presentations and we're bringing national speakers in. So if we can do that for 1,400 teachers for Deeper Learning, I would hope that as we talk about moving forward with the budget, that we put professional development money in place for some other areas of our strategic plan, because other folks are having to catch as catch can. So this is a model that I think that we should look at as a district for professional development, in that we are certainly celebrating our teachers for the fine work that they do and incorporating national speakers to it as well. So I agree. It was great to be in the room for that, in the building. I didn't have the coffee, so I won't comment about that. Also wanted to tack on to the retirement dinner. I was there also, and as we talk about teachers, I wanted to share a story. I saw a family friend, and she had come from a graduation where she had earned her 3rd degree, and this time in nursing. And there was a lady with her that I did not know, and so she introduced herself to me, and she said, I was Melissa's 2nd grade teacher, and ever since Melissa was in the 2nd grade, They have developed a relationship. We talk about culture, climate, relationship. They've developed a relationship since 2nd grade. This is the 3rd degree that Melissa has earned. This is the 3rd graduation that she has come to. This teacher lives in Texas. She is a part of the family. So if you think the teachers don't make a difference, think again. It was, I mean, I felt like this is what we do for our students. And she has been with her all of her life. She was her 2nd grade teacher. So I just wanted to share a true success story that it happens. And it happens in Louisville, Kentucky, and it happens in Texas. I just wanted to share that. And the other thing I would like to do is to report on the fact that District 1 is losing 2 of their principals at the end of this year. And I wanted to give them this shout out tonight. Because they're both elementary principals. So Mary Minyard is retiring after 30+ years with JCPS, and she is retiring as the principal at Whitney Young Elementary School. Why I want to mention Mary Minyard is that under her leadership, we were able to put the IB program in an elementary school, I think the only one in the state of Kentucky, and for that, I say thank you to Mary Minyard. She works tirelessly for quality education for her students. I was by there yesterday to say thank you for all that you do for our students, and she had been there Saturday working in the yard of the school. I would encourage you to drive by Whitney Young, stop, pull in, and look at the work that she's done since she's been there with the help of others. But her staff has given her a little library in the front of the school and a bench in her honor. So to Mary Minyard, I would like to say thank you for a job well done. I would also like to say that Robert Gunn is leaving his position at Bick Elementary School. He's accepted a new job assignment as the principal of the elementary school and assistant director of the West End School. So because if you don't know where the West End School is, it's in District 1, and it's still a part of what I will be checking on a regular basis. Principal Gunn has been a phenomenal leader at Foster Traditional and at Bick Elementary School. He's a magnet for students. If you've never been around him, the last time I was there for the Texas Roadhouse celebration, I stood at the end of the hall and watched the kids. I mean, he is a magnet for the students. And because of him, students feel better. They feel like that they belong. And it's always interesting for me to see his work, and I look forward to more work. Both of these principals have been champions for District 1. And tonight we talked about in our work session about champions, and because I've been to the Muhammad Ali Museum and to the bookstore, I want to share something that I got from there about champions. Champions are made from something that they have deep inside them, a desire, a dream, a vision. They must have last-minute stamina. They must be a little faster. They must have the skill and the will. The will never goes away, and I would like to personally thank these 2 phenomenal principals for the work that they have done for the students, staff, and families. They will be missed. That completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Porter. Vice Chair Wilner.
So my report is in writing, but I do want to just, it's already been lifted up twice, but one more time for the Deeper Learning Symposium, and I particularly want to mention that when we started the strategic planning process back in 2015 and we established board work groups, and Ms. Duncan and I were became the strategy work group, and we chose to go out into the community. We had external facilitators. We went to the community all across this county and said, what do you want our children to know and what do you want them to be able to do? And the answers that people brought back with, we want people who are engaged. We want people who are excited about learning. We want people who, know math and can read and all of that. But what we heard over and over again, we want compassionate citizens, people who are engaged, people who care, people who can communicate, and all of that turned into our strategic plan, or the teaching and learning focus on our strategic plan. And Ms. Porter, you were at many of those meetings as the vice chair at the time, and Brent, you were there, and there were people in the room earlier today who were part of those discussions. And to hear it from the community, to translate that into a plan, to consult with experts, to consult with our own expert staff, and then to see it like really take root in this meaningful, powerful way. This is, 2 years ago what people told us they wanted, and to see how excited and engaged the teachers were and administrators at every session. This was not sit and get. This was people really living it, doing it, feeling it, experiencing it, which is what we want in every classroom, every day, in every school, right? And so I was just really, it was profoundly moving to me, actually, to see from, again, community voice filtered back through the district expertise and then given back to the community in the form of what our children are going to be experiencing in their classrooms once this really takes root. So just reflecting a lot on that in the past few days.
All right, thank you. I'll make mine short and sweet. I just want to also thank the board members, Member Duncan, Geese, and Member Porter, who attended the retirement dinner at the Olmsted. Member Geese is correct. That is a beautiful venue. I will give props to Terry Robinson for changing that, as well as Allison Martin, our communications director, our chief of communications, because I know that after last year, you're like, we need a different venue for this. And I will say that, yes, even though the Olmsted is a very, very nice venue, it was actually less expensive than last year too, so I do want to point that out before anyone gets an idea that we were spending more money. No, we were actually choosing a better venue for less money. And I also want to give a shout out to those folks that organized the Deeper Learning. I may be incorrect on that, in the fact that my understanding is that the Deeper Learning Conference grew out of JCPS Forward as well as the EQUAL Committee. If I'm mistaken about that, I apologize, but I think that's where it came from. So I want to thank those folks for pushing this forward and for making that a reality. I saw so much support about that online. I know it may not have gotten a lot of attention from the community, but it was really, I think, a beneficial professional development. I know I put out a tweet basically saying, hey, look, it's summertime, and look what your teachers are doing. They're not by the beach. So, and I think we had, I want to say, if someone can correct me, was it 1,600 teachers there about? Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, we have 6,000 teachers, 1,600 of them on their vacation were there to learn more about how to teach better and more effectively in the classroom. So that's something really to shout out. So for me, oh, and one other thing about the coffee, that is not their fault. That you would complain to the Fair Board about that. I'm sure they have a vendor contract for that. So yeah, I know you don't care. So with that, I think that concludes board reports, unless there's any further discussion. Hearing none, there's no need to accept that or vote on it, so we are concluded with that. Now we're moving on to our last item, which is an executive session, of which there are 2 that are needed for this evening. So at this time, I need to read some verbiage to go into executive session. The board will now conduct a closed session as permitted by KRS 61.8101 of the Open Meetings Act for the purpose of discussion of collective bargaining negotiations with employees. Now, before I move on, one more thing. I will say that there are 2 executive sessions, as I mentioned. This is for negotiation discussion. The other one is for the appointment of an individual employee, or possible appointment of an individual employee. That being said, is there a motion to go into executive session regarding negotiations? Motion made by Member Horn, seconded by Member Kolb. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. We are now in executive session. We'll be back in hopefully shortly. Don't get ahead of yourself.
Are we on the 3rd floor or back here?